convene the Facilities Committee meeting and ask for a motion to pass the minutes from the last meeting by Matt. And we have a second by Claudia. Any changes, deletion, corrections? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We're going to start off with Frank Morehouse in Buildings and Grounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first item under referrals is I was asked to look at the possibility of putting showers in the HSB building and also look at the showers in this building. After looking at the HSB building, I think it would be very difficult to put showers in there. The only place we really have where they could go is down in the basement, and it would require getting into our sewer pump to pump the water up and out. But we do have showers available in our maintenance building over here. And what I would suggest to the committee is maybe if I could put an email out to all employees telling them those showers are available, they can use them anytime, and see how the usage goes. If we find that we're cramped for use, then there are other options in this building that we could open up. But I think probably any use that they're going to get, we can more than handle in our shop.
Okay, any comments from the committee? Claudia?
Thanks. I think it's a great idea that the employees have an opportunity to have access to the showers, and since we already have them, just sending them an email letting them know on their time, on their off time, that it's there for them. That's great. We don't need to go out and do anything.
We just got started, and Frank brought up the showers that he had checked into, and have difficulty in HSB building, and he has showers in his unit that he's going to send an email out and offer up to anyone that wants to use it and monitor usage going forward. Go ahead, Rachel.
Just as a reminder, this all came about from our HR department, who had made an inquiry months ago about a situation that they had and was looking for that type of a resolution to a problem. And frankly, what has been interesting through meeting with the Wellness Committee, and Frank has been fantastic, is that we do have that option in different parts of the county in case of a hazardous spill or things like that. So I was really pleased when Frank said there were these brand new showers at no cost that were full of boxes that he was able to identify as an appropriate option. And I think that's just one example of everybody getting together and collaborating and talking and finding a no-cost solution to an issue.
Okay, good. Any other comments? Okay, moving on.
Under information and discussion, the court project is going along very well. The inside is probably 90% completed as far as sheetrocking, and we have some glazing left to do on the front entrance, which they're not going to do until we start having weather issues, because that's where all the contractors are bringing their material into the building, so they want to leave it as open as possible. The big air conditioning unit is scheduled to be delivered next week and will be set with a crane, so it'll be necessary to shut down a part of the building for a short amount of time while they swing it over onto the building. But I've talked to the courts about that, and they're going to move all their operations to the new court area for that morning at least.
Okay.
The paving is scheduled for the first week in October, with the goal of having the ring road reopened by the second week in October, at the end of the second week. So I think before cold weather really gets here, I think we'll be in good shape as far as plowing.
Is it the committee's pleasure to take another tour at some point in time when we wouldn't be in the way of everybody? Is everyone interested in that? Frank, could you scope out a time when we could take an hour or so to walk through and take another look? It was very informative the last time. So
there's a mock-up coming, right?
Yes, October 9th, there's a mock-up of the courtroom. They're going to have the actual materials in place. They won't be installed, some of them, but they'll have a ceiling grid in with the tile that will be in there, and the light fixtures. The flooring, they'll have samples of. So if anybody's interested in that, I believe it's, I'll have to check on the time and I can get that out, but it's October 9th in the morning. I believe it's 11 o'clock in the morning.
would that be a good time for us to?
Yeah, it'd be a great time if you want to do the tour right after that mock-up.
How long will the mock-up take?
I think it's just a matter of looking at it and seeing if we like the material. We can go before or after.
After would be better.
October 9th is a holiday. I don't care, but
Well, maybe I'm giving the wrong date.
That's Columbus Day, so I'm fine with that, I just wanted to...
No, it won't be that day.
Okay.
I'll
Okay,
have to
you can
check.
email us, so,
Yeah,
and,
Los Angeles,
okay.
Columbus never came.
And Ron, do you have any more to add with your correspondence with...
No, but the mock-up is something to see, because, I mean, almost all of the material, the wood and all, will be in place for us to look at, and the paint too, right?
Yes.
Is that inclusive of the carpet, the furniture,
They'll-
I
they'll
think
have-
it's
the
sampling.
finishes and
Yeah.
all?
They'll have carpet tiles laid out near the material so you can tell what it's going to look like. They're not going to install it yet, but...
Yeah. But that, and just to refresh, as we went through the core team meetings and different meetings that we had with Clark Patterson, et cetera, to get to this point, they had their designers come in, they had court people on board, and our staffing, engineer, all the people that have been involved, showing different samples, et cetera. So the selection process was pretty thorough and done by a professional at Clark Patterson, and some suggestions, et cetera, for longevity of different products that were used and finishes. So I know that the core team meeting did have, we sequestered ourselves after that to find out how it was going, who was making the decisions, and I think they were happy with the fact that there was a multitude of professionals and people that would be working with it every day that were involved with what you'll see when they do that mock-up. Okay?
I think the judges will probably go through that mock-up too.
Okay.
I can just add, there's some paving is going to occur this fall, but there's going to be more next year.
Out front.
Yeah, the main parking lot on the Route 9 side of the building is going to remain untouched right now. There's still some lighting to do and a revised layout of that. So the paving this year is going to be the ring road, and then the paving on the east side behind Frank's building.
Okay.
We did
Anything
get
else?
the alternative power source too coming in. Took a little while to get that scheduled.
Okay.
It's done.
Any other questions on the, court update? Hey, Frank?
The arraignment area is similar. We're working on getting some funding from the state for that area. Mr. Montesi and I met with some of the local judges and came up with a budget. I think the state is very much on board, at least for the initial setup cost and the first year's rent. There's no guarantee on the second year's, but if you want to add anything to that?
No, we talked about it. It's coming along. I mean, Frank and his crew is ready. It's just a matter of, as I said, by December we wanted to have our plan in place and into the office of the judge, or the judicial down in Albany. And if they approve it, then probably it would take maybe a month to get squared away, and we could be operational. The judges, all of the judges in the county, except for one or two, are on board with a schedule and a time frame that they would serve, and they're going to be compensated $250 a day too. So
Okay.
we've gotten good support from them, and it seems like it's going to be workable. So our goal right now is to get all of this paperwork done and get the plan into the state and have them approve it, so next year we can be operational.
Doug?
Yeah, just confirm for me, this is no additional cost. This is already part of the 16 million, 20 million bonded courthouse expansion, right?
This is totally separate from the court.
Yeah,
The arraignment area is totally separate from the courthouse?
yeah.
This is a county-run
That-
off-hours arraignment area.
Oh, we're talking about the off-hours arraignment
Yeah.
area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Claudia?
I just wanted to say, we got a great update on Monday from Judge Hobbs, and Ron has been doing an awesome job facilitating that process and going through, and I think that soon it's going to come to our committee to kind of approve the plan that they want to submit to the state, so I hope that everyone, looks out for that email, reviews the stuff so we can be ready to vote and get that going before the end of this before the end of the year.
Okay.
I think it would really be a big benefit to our county to have that in place, and Washington County is getting ahead of us, and my competitive mode is kicking in.
love it, but yeah, that was a good article in the paper today.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Yeah,
I
it was in
didn't see it.
today, and, yeah, but there's some funding they gotta put in, and once again, the state, so it was interesting.
Okay.
Any other comments on the arraignment area?
One thing I would add, I've run into it before with our budget and the court budget. The court budget goes from April to April, and our county budget goes from January to January. So there may be a time when we have to lay out the material or whatever we're doing in
Yeah.
there before we get reimbursed from the state.
Okay.
So,
But you're pretty good about letting us know what's going on there, and the treasurer knows, et cetera.
It's usually not an issue. We run into it occasionally on the maintenance in lieu of rent when it overlaps year to year, but
Okay.
I just want to make you aware of it. If you see a big expenditure out of our budget, it'll be coming back to us.
Okay. Rachel?
Just two quick questions about both the central arraignment and the court project. Is there a way, I noticed when we went and we looked at the area for the centralized arraignment, that there were a lot of extra desks and chairs and things kind of stored there. And I know we had a discussion that throughout this renovation process, there will be a lot of things that are going to either be reused or thrown out or discarded, whatever the case might be, with new furniture coming in. Is there a way that we could send an email out once you get a handle on that to see what departments may have a need for an extra filing cabinet or chair or desk, so that in the budget discussions, what we keep hearing about and also in the evals is the need for additional furniture, filing cabinets, to the extent we can decrease some of that cost with reusing. Do we do that already, send an email out?
We do. Most of our excess furniture goes to eBay eventually, but purchasing will send out a list of items that we have, and if anyone's looking for them,
Okay.
as they get them in, they send them out.
They do, okay.
To be quite honest, a lot of the stuff that's over there is garbage. Some of it is the state's, you can't discard it, but
Okay.
sometimes we scavenge it, we take pieces here and there and put them together and build something out of
All right.
the old stuff, but for the most part, departments know what we have.
Okay.
The problem is, they usually are looking for something we don't have, like
Okay.
an oddball size or...
Right. Thank you. My second question was just as it related.
Rach, just,
Oh.
I think Mike wanted to address what you're
Oh, I'm
talking about
sorry.
also, if you don't mind.
I was just going to say the same thing that Frank just said. Purchasing always sends out emails about any excess furniture that they get, all the department heads, so we get a chance to look and see if there's something
Really?
going on.
Okay, I've never seen one, so that's great. I'm
And
glad
I know
happened.
they do, because the fire department capitalized on it, came up and got a bunch of
Good.
furniture and desks. It was some years ago, but they are pretty good about offering up furniture, et cetera.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. This is my second
I'm
part of the
sorry.
question, is that with the centralized arraignment, I think one of the concerns, and I think the county attorney's office was looking into it as well, but when we had the meeting with Judge Hobbs, he had said that while there is a law that says all our expenses need to be reimbursed by the state, there hasn't been yet any county that has submitted for expenses, so they're unfamiliar with how that process will work in terms of reimbursement, that Washington County isn't yet to the point where they've submitted for any type of reimbursement. So I do have concerns about how that process will happen, especially because it's brand new. But I'm hopeful that it's on the radar screen with the county attorney's office, and they said there will not be a contract that we enter into because it's a state law that says we'll be reimbursed. So, in terms of a contract for the treasurer's office being signed, that won't be occurring, and they were very clear about that.
Yeah, the statute that was changed, there were several different chapters that were changed, judiciary law among them, and one of the provisions said that expenses to have the centralized arraignment area shall be reimbursed by the state. Do you have any doubt that the state would pay a bill that the statute says it has to pay to the county government? What's the grounds for that? It's such a new process, and the law was so recently changed that there have only been a handful, if
Right.
that, of plans that have been approved yet.
Yeah.
So.
You all set, Rachel?
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Ron?
And Rach, to answer your question, I think Washington County was sued and won the lawsuit, so it's a different situation for them to get funded, right?
They lost, but by losing, they got state funding to cover the costs for what they had to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
bit different from us or the others, I guess.
Okay, anything else on the arraignment?
Pretty strange, you lose and you win.
Yes, right?
The next item was brought to me by Supervisor Bramer. There's some money that was in a settlement with Siemens, and she expressed a concern that the money should be spent on something, a green energy project of some kind, maybe on the geothermal well field. My suggestion is, if we're going to move forward with that, is that some engineering firm should look at that system and see what it's capable of, what it's not capable of. Maybe we want to look at something totally different. To replace all of the heat pumps in the building, it's about $330,000, and that doesn't include the hose kits for it or the installation. There's other projects we could look at. Some of the LED lighting. I know we've looked at solar in the past and didn't find it to be an option, but my thought is if the committee is interested, I can reach out to Clark Patterson, who are on board with us, and they could look at it, maybe give us a price on a study. But I'll look for direction.
Claudia, you want to expand on that?
Yeah, thanks for looking into that. My initial thought was that we should use that money from Siemens to fix the pumps that were the primary problem. But after talking with Frank, he said that might not be the best option. It might not gain us enough benefit from replacing those pumps. So, as a secondary thought, this was your suggestion, Frank, is looking at the other energy usage at the county and where can we do a better job of getting ourselves off of fossil fuels. So if that means upgrading the geothermal, great, or maybe doing a solar project on the roof. I mean, I think that our roofs have lots of ground space and structurally they're sound to hold that. But, I think it makes sense to use our money wisely for a study. And at NISAC, they talked about NYSERDA has energy audits they can do for free, but that would only give us a general assessment of where we're using the most energy. But I think that that's something that we should study and look into and use that money that we got from Siemens wisely on a capital project.
Okay. Would you like at this time for finance and the budget to chime in? And
Sure.
if you want to go first, Mr. Sokol, you have anything as far as taking the settlement money, appropriating it towards some green energy thing? You have thoughts on that?
Well, right now, if we don't do anything with it, it is going to fall into the general fund as of next year.
Right.
You know how I feel about studying the love information. But if it serves a purpose in saving us money in the long run, I mean, it could be a viable option to go that route. I mean, I remember at our grocery store when we had it, some of those compressors just drained so much, and it actually cost you more. So, I think it's worth looking into.
Okay. Frank?
Well, I hate to throw cold water on it, but I think we should give back to taxpayers to pay for that purpose. Help keep taxes up.
And Chairman?
Sounds like we're gonna do the same thing we did before.
I think all improvement requests should go through the department and be measured by the department, the developed department against all other improvement requests. If you have an energy project that saves us money in the short and the long term, I'm sure it will rise to the top. But the money just doesn't go away. I think it's in the savings account now, and I believe at the end of the year it falls to the fund balance. Correct. That's correct. So it's not going anywhere, and it's there. But I think that there's an appropriate way to proceed with those kinds of requests. And I think that any supervisor should, if they have specific interests or specific ideas, should communicate those to the involved department, and then the department can weigh them with everything else that they're doing or planning to do in the future.
Claudia, is that helpful? I'm sorry, Frank.
No, frankly, that's not helpful. I mean, I did bring it to Frank to discuss with him the needs of the facility and being our municipal center. And you guys know I wasn't here for the entire history of the whole Siemens thing, but I feel like I was instrumental in helping us get to a settlement with Siemens. We wouldn't have the $500,000 if we did not go out for the study to find out what was wrong and realize that the pumps were not working. And that's where I initially wanted to see the money go, is to replace the pumps that aren't working. we have this really interesting geothermal project. People at NISAC were talking about putting in geothermals now, you know, like as a really new, innovative thing. And I'm thinking, we already have one, just don't...
It doesn't work.
I won't say what I want to say, but it's really disappointing that we would not look into this, a basic
Wait a minute.
energy study.
I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah.
you brought a point up, which is an excellent point. We're trying to navigate your point to get it to where people will buy in on it. So
Right.
we've heard the narrative from Frank, who will look into it.
Okay.
But you, as one supervisor, having the history you have, we've asked the finance, budget, and the chairman.
Right.
So it's only in the realm of navigation of
Right.
of where you want to move this forward. So the committee doesn't have a lot in front of them right now
Okay.
to support, you know, what you're saying. Not saying it isn't good, but does this help you navigating to getting it to where it's got to go? Now, Frank's got to spend time on this.
Right.
And if all 20 of us start coming up with ideas for the 500,000, that's going to be difficult on Frank or Jeff or other department heads where this could be utilized. So I'm just saying there needs to be a chime in as so we directionally, you know, get this
Okay.
to take off properly.
Go ahead. Oh.
And that was the realm I wanted to discuss it.
Okay.
I don't want you to take offense that, you know, we're not just jumping all on board just yet.
No, that's fine. My idea was that we come up with the best plan for the county, and that's what I thought we were.
Okay.
What I would like to see is consensus from the committee is that Frank could spend a little time researching what might be the next step.
Okay. And Matt?
I think we sit tight, and eventually this, whatever equipment in this municipal center is going to need to be replaced over time. It doesn't make sense to go out for more studies. We've just had studies. We know where we're at. This equipment has a longevity, and that 500,000 is going to go right back to our fund balance, and we'll deal with these issues as they come, because we're going to have other needs.
Travis, I'm going to call on you in a second because you've done the most research on it. And I'd appreciate your input on it.
Could I just have Frank answer about the equipment needs?
Sure, I'm going to, Frank, I'm sorry.
All things old or new again, this is the same conversation that was had when we entered into the cogen and the geothermal project. This is the same exact conversation. How can we reduce our cost of electricity and the price of fuel? So here we are again, you know, it's like going around circles here.
Okay, anything else from the committee on the discussion? I'd like to call on Travis just to, because of the research he did on the heat pumps, et cetera, and the cost benefit that we would have.
I'll wait till I hear from Travis.
You wanted to speak before? or
I'll
after?
wait till after.
Okay. Go ahead, Travis.
Thank you. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And I'm not going to go backwards and talk about, okay, all the bad things that happened. But what I will do is try to go forward and tell you that actually in very recent history, we were looking at similar things at the town offices and what we could do. And my first step actually in that was to talk to Frank Morehouse and ask him for some suggestions. And he gave us a very good suggestion, and that was to go talk to a local electrical house, ASCO, which we did. And they then put us in touch with a Rise Engineering, who does a lot of these LED upgrades things. If you look at it, the LEDs, at that time the T8 fluorescents, were the only portion of the municipal center thing that actually paid back, actually had any value. And that was done back in 2007 or so. Well, we at the town had upgrades to T8s around 2011. What we found in a very recent study, which cost us $0, the best kind of study, right, was that though actually if we replace those T8s, and you have a lot of T8s, with LEDs, we got a proposal back which included some rebates from National Grid and such that had a return on investment of 15%. You can't get a better, I think you'd be pretty happy with it. All right, yes, of 15%. And there is no letter of intent, no, you got to do this or we're going to charge you money for engineering and all these other traps that people like Siemens put in there. It worked out very well, and I would suggest that you might want to follow the same And I know you've done work with RISE before. I know that Ross mentioned them to me a year ago or more, looking into some projects here. So here's, this is low-hanging fruit. It doesn't cost you any money. We just happened to get this proposal in to take care of two buildings, the two biggest buildings in Queensbury, for under $30,000, payback in less than 7 years. And comparing that, we got and I won't get into it too much, but we got a quote from a similar type organization to Siemens, which was called SmartWatt, and they came in, at $260,000 not for the same job, but for a job that RISE is saying we'll do for $30,000. To me, it was night and day, and it all came from Frank, and I think that he's more than capable of taking you down that same road. Thank you.
Doug?
Yeah, I kind of concur with most here that we worked very hard to get $500,000 from Siemens over a number of objections from most supervisors, and I think putting it in a general fund makes a lot of sense right now. I also agree we should always be looking for more efficiency and less cost to the taxpayers on any project we do. So I agree with Claudia in the sense that, hey, is there a better way to spend the money? Yeah, maybe. I agree with Frank saying he's got an idea, or you two collaborate on it. But for right now, I say let's put the $500,000 in the general fund, and if we have a better way of saving more money, we take the money out of the general fund. And we go through finance, we go through the proper steps, and we do it. So that's how I think we win for everybody. I think Claudia wins, Frank wins, we win, we put the money in when we need it, we have it. That's all.
Any other discussion on, Ron?
Well, based on what Travis said, and I know what from our experience in Queensbury buildings, that maybe the LED is one of the primary things that we should ask Frank to come back with some information. It doesn't cost us a big, engineering consultant, and it seems like an easy fix, if you will. 15% return is pretty good.
Okay. All right.
I would recommend
Anyone
that.
else want to chime in? Okay, that ends that discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the last thing was the budget review. I can either start with the buildings and grounds portions now, or we can wait until after airport and do it all together.
Could we do the airport first today? Could we go for the airport and then
You want to do the airport, Red?
Could we?
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one question. Can Frank just give us an update on asbestos removal in the jail?
Can you, Frank?
Well, we had Clark Patterson ask for an updated study, and I don't believe we have a dollar amount back yet from that, but
Okay.
we are revising this study.
As soon as you get it, you'll pass it along to us.
Thank you.
Can you do that in email form, so we have it before our next meeting? That'll help.
Thank you.
Claudia, anything? Thought you had a question? Okay, will we need Frank for the budget review, or?
If he can stay, I think airport's going to go pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Ross.
Actually, similar on the same
That-
subject.
What?
It's a different subject.
Did you have questions?
Just before we jump into airport,
Okay, go ahead.
can we have a status update on the building where the emergency vehicles are supposed to be going?
Yes, I talked to Jeff after the meeting where Brian said there was a welding issue, et
Yeah.
cetera, and Jeff can explain that to you.
There's a welding issue every time we weld, so.
Here it is.
So we're used to dealing with welding issues, so there's no issue.
Is it complete, the,
No, it's not. It's quite a bit of work. It's going to be slow and methodical getting the welding done. Some of the welding is complete, some of the column bases have been upgraded, some of the welding and attachment of plates for some of the columns is underway and they're complete. Right, Frank Lehman's has been in doing some additional electrical work. What's going to take some time really are the ties that are going to tie the curtain walls to the roof and stiffen the roof structure. That's going to be the entire perimeter of the building. So that's the one that's going to be slow. We're going to have our tenant move equipment, move material while we work our way around the perimeter.
Are you guys happy with the progress? Is it going to be ready for the snow, etc.?
I have space. I can jam those equipment in somewhere, but in order to get an official go-ahead from codes, we need to complete all of the work. It's going to depend on what other things pop up. I do have my welder. You know, as we get closer to snow and ice season, he starts welding on plows that break and other equipment that breaks when we use it. So I'm going to try and get it done as quickly as possible. It's just we're kind of we're borrowing our welder out of our machinery shop that has a full workload over there, and there's times where he will get pulled off the project for emergencies or for better the repair work. So we're gonna proceed as quickly as possible. If there's an immediate concern for getting it out of weather, then I've offered to Brian before that we can store his equipment temporarily in other buildings.
Is this something that we can outsource, the welding? I mean, whether it's Miller Mechanical or Roselle, I mean, can we outsource this and just get it done?
Is that would that help you? In other words, I know you still have to have
It would help me. It would be
running
some
the
additional
job.
expense. And I think part of it, I think part of the difficulty with that is a contractor's going to want to come in, have the whole area cleared, and put a crew on it and knock it all out. So to some degree, us plugging away at it little by little makes it feasible, given that we have a tenant in there. So.
Well, this is, this could be considered, based, when we talked to our budget officer, as a one and done thing. I mean, originally it was going to be $100,000 to build a new building for Brian and his equipment, and here we have an opportunity to use something that's there. What would, if you threw a number at the welding, would it be $10,000?
I just don't know that it's feasible to have a contractor come in, because they're not going to come one day a week. They're going to want to come, for a week straight with an entire crew and get it all done. I just don't know. I think it would be difficult to contract it because the space is occupied. And the building, remember, the building for Brian was going to be $860,000.
800, yeah.
So,
Claudia?
I'd just like to see us get through this. If there's something we need to communicate to the tenant about us being able to get in there, let's have our county attorney do that.
Rachel?
Get it done.
Thank you. I'm just, like many of us, at least for me, it's been 4 years of having this discussion, and it started with like 30,000 and then went up to 80, then 100, and then 800. And now, I guess could we have a plan in place by next meeting that, maybe we could look into the contracting for the welding, let's find out if that's possible, and then also have a plan in place that if those enhancements aren't done by the time the snow falls, and while we've had some forgiving winters, this may not be one, we are continuing to see the need. It's been expressed by the committee and from the Public Safety Committee or Criminal Justice Committee that this is priority. Is there some way to just have a plan in place that if it's not there, these are where this vehicle will be stored and that vehicle, let's just get a plan in place. I mean, it's just been 4 years of having a discussion about a building to cover major equipment that, needs collaboration.
I'm sharing your frustration, but I think we're on the right track. We've identified the location, we're working on it. The immediate need, going back to what you said, would have been a long time ago.
Yeah.
They've been parked outside, so I don't think we need to move them around. I think we need to finish that and put them in there and get Brian comfortable with what he needs to put in there and work with him and get it taken care of. I think we're headed in the right direction, and Frank, you'll help out also to expedite this, hopefully before the snow, so we can... Craig, did you have a question, or...?
No, just cleaning my glasses.
All right, and we can start with airport. Now, Claudia? Airport?
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, the pending items, the first item on the list, we can cover that during the budget review discussion at the end for the airport revenues and expenditures. The second referral or pending item is about the T-Hangar grant application. We still have not received any word on any of the awards for the T-hangers or for any of those grants that have been issued by New York State DOT. Number 3, the Airfield Guidance Sign Pavement Repairs and Markings Project. We did receive the formal grant offer from the FAA. We are using LED signs out at the airport, so all the signs are being changed. We do expect to have some pretty significant energy savings there. Information for discussion and review. The Balloon Festival preparations are going quite well. The permit sales have increased dramatically. We've got a 50% increase over last year, so 2016 permit sales were about 4,800 and change. This year we're over 7,000, almost 7,300 so far.
Wow.
So the permit sales are going very well. There is a new parking traffic flow pattern for the Balloon Festival. I'm sure everybody's heard. I have requested that IT put up on the website today the new traffic flow pattern map, so that should be out on the county's website sometime today. It has been distributed to the Balloon Festival folks so they can distribute that out via Facebook. So the information is getting put out there about the new traffic flow patterns. We're going to be using the new emergency access road off of Ridge Road. For the Runway 19 extension, as we know, the federal fiscal year ends on September 30th. The FAA has not completed their review of the response to comments, so we do not anticipate getting a grant this year for the runway extension design grant application. We do anticipate that to happen early next year, or early in the grant process next year, I should say. Other than that, everything is moving along. No changes to the status on the runway extension project. And that's all I have for committee.
From what I read, the FAA said they would continue to fund the EA assessment, but they would not. But the funding for the runway extension at the very earliest would be in fiscal 2019. Is that correct?
That would be for the construction phase. For the design phase, the next phase of the project. Instead of, the grant, it's too late in the federal fiscal year to get it this year, so it'll happen next year. And that'd be the design phase, 2018. So construction would therefore get pushed out to 2019.
Okay, so at the very earliest, they're saying that the funding may be there for 2019 for the first phase, and then 2020 and on for other phases. That's what I read.
For construction.
Right, okay.
There's still the design phase yet to go.
Okay. And I didn't see where it said anything about the design funding in the report I saw. Did you, Claudia?
I didn't either.
I didn't see any money from the FAA saying they were going to pay for the design funding for fiscal 2018. All I saw was they would fund the EA continued assessment. They would fund for 2019, 2020 and on. Could you forward?
It is in here.
Is it in there? Okay.
Well, it states at 18 or 19.
For design reimbursable agreement grants.
Okay, so they
18 or 19.
18 or 19 for the design, and then 19 for the construction.
That email is from the Air Traffic Division. They're not the folks that issue the grants for our project. Her involvement in the process is strictly for the reimbursable agreement. So basically, her division will be charging back the airport's division for their work on the navigational aids. So her involvement is for that design process, but she is just updating information for her database, separate from what the airport's division does. So just to provide a little clarity on that.
Thank you. And could you give me an update on the botanist from the DEC that came and his assessment of the Morro Fend and what he concluded? First of all, he was surprised that CNS doesn't know the size of the Morro Fend, which I found kind of comical almost, that CNS feels that the Morro Fend is much smaller than it is, that the botanist, Mr. Ettinger, feels it's 3 times the size of what CNS says the smaller Morro Fend is, which is critical because that's the one basically we're going to fill in and destroy. So I found that a little alarming personally, that our engineer continues with the wrong size, according to the DEC official who came out and actually mapped it all out and said this and this and this. So could you give an update on the communication from him to us about what he's seeing from a hydrology standpoint and so forth? Would you give us an update, please?
Well, he came out and did another survey of the Marl Fen sites, and as far as the size of the Marl Fen goes, I believe Ms. Ettinger was the one who was confused as to the size of the Marl Fen. He was using some photometric data and aerial photography, whereas CNS and our engineers use GPS survey locations, so they have the more accurate information. And that issue was discussed previously a year ago when they done the initial survey, and it was clarified at that point in time. Unfortunately, I think Ms. Ettinger may have forgotten about that clarification a year ago when we discussed it, when we were comparing the photometric survey versus the GPS surveys. So we're still, and that doesn't change any of the data that's in the EA.
So you're saying Mr. Ettinger is not quite accurate on that? Okay, maybe he is, maybe he isn't, but it seems like he's been out there twice, and okay. And then I found it interesting, I'm no botanist, but how the fens are connected hydraulically, and that concerns me, because if you destroy one, you're basically going to have significant impact on the other. At least that's from a layman's point of view how I read it. Now I found that his report was actually very disconcerting, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's taken further from on a federal standpoint, and if a FONSI is not issued because of some of the disconcerting points that he was making about the Marl Fen and how critical it is, and from a biological standpoint. But again, I'm a layman, and as well as you are, Ross, and well as we all are in this room. But I do find it very interesting, and Claudia, I think you wanted to mention a couple things too, so I'll turn it over to Claudia.
Question, Doug. Are you satisfied with the amount of effort and engineering and detail about what's getting looked at?
Well, I don't think we're done yet. I think I think this is just opening up other significant environmental
Well, there
questions.
was some hydraulic issues that were brought to light, and I think that's where the direction they're headed.
Yes, that's correct, and that's how I interpreted that.
Yeah. So, and that was, I think we were on the docket to get our grant funding for design, and I think that
may hold it up.
That postponed it until next year, until all that data
if
gets...
it happens at all, yeah, because I think that's going to be significant.
But I think that in light of what they've been doing over the years, from the long-eared bat to, checking for over a year for that, et cetera, it's very detailed, the environmental assessment that's taken place by all agencies. So this is just a continuation. Claudia, you have a...
I don't have anything further.
No? You had your hand up.
I was going to say, I just
You can't bluff.
find it interesting or disconcerting that, I read the person's email back, Mr. Ettinger, saying it's his determination that it was 0.2 acres. So for, there to be some confusion, that's disconcerting. We should...
Jeff has some history. Do you want to do that?
I know that goes back and forth, but I don't
Just
feel like
something-
this guy's probably just forgotten that it's...
They've had a bunch of experts, so it was bigger, smaller. Now this gentleman's email has made it bigger again.
We're talking about a 2 or 3 sentence email back and forth that probably he does forget. But I mean, part of the process is we'll be continuing coordination with Mr. Ettinger and the DEC and Army Corps and everybody else. Just in layman's terms, the survey that was done by our engineers was done with DEC was present when the wetlands were flagged. So they went out, the botanists along with the DEC put little flags in the ground marking the perimeter of the Marl Fen. Then they took a GPS survey, an actual surveyor surveyed this squiggly line around the Marl Fen and came up with a 0.08 acres. That was a year and a half ago, almost, and they were present. What Mr. Ettinger has done is taken an aerial photo, which I can pull one up on Google for you now, and looked at it and said it looks like the Marl Fen is here. So I'm sure we'll be discussing with him, in the future, our data, our mark out and detailed survey versus his polygon that he drew over an aerial photo, a satellite photo. Who knows where we'll end up in the end? It will proceed to additional engineering effort and design, and we'll continue the coordination with Mr. Edinger, DEC, Army Corps, and everybody else.
Doug?
One more thing I read out of that was, he said the moral fund is still I don't know if he used the word alive and well, but he said it's still ongoing. It hasn't, there had been some discussion that it died and we had killed it. Well, we haven't killed it, and I think that's significant. There's been, we flooded it out. It was our doing, and some beavers, and we didn't address it, and we've killed it. Well, we haven't killed it, according to Mr. Edinger, the expert. It's still alive and well.
I just want to respond quickly. I mean, no one's saying we're going out there killing it. I mean, I think Ross is doing a good
No,
job
in the
trying
past,
to
Marty,
improve it and fix, in the past.
Sorry, I didn't say anybody's trying to kill it. In the past, it's been referenced from some people that the moral fund has died or has been, okay? And I'm just clarifying that it's not, that the DEC Ettinger said it's alive and well, and it's not that.
Rachel?
Thank you. My comments are about what Supervisor Bramer and Beatty are talking about right now, and before I make them, I just wanted to say that, Dan, I so appreciate the way that you lead discussion at committee, and all of you can laugh at me and say that I'm kissing up to Dan because he's leaving, that's fine, but I hope that whoever takes your place as chair of facilities, these are difficult conversations, and the way that you allow all of us to have that opportunity, and so respectfully, I appreciate that. And with that said, I hope that you'll be as sensitive to my next comment, which is, on August 23rd, there was a meeting with the FAA, and what bothers me about that is that, I know Supervisor Beatty's asked to be put in the email strings of things, but we've resurrected the Airport Advisory Group. I know we report on this. I hope I'll have that opportunity today to give a report from the group. But it does concern me that, I'm sure you have multiple meetings with the FAA, but is there any way that we could be notified or invited to come to some of those or find out about them? Because August 23rd, and Ross just clarified that there was a difference between who this woman is that they met with and someone else from the lead planner with the FAA Eastern Service Center. But, here she puts that the runway design reimbursable agreement is expected in FY18 or 19, but more significantly, that Phase 1 construction from runway 119 has been moved out to FY19, and Phase 2 construction's moved out to FY20, master plan is 2021. I just think that it puts into the big picture again that this process has been so many years, and, I just am surprised because so many people have spoken out against this extension.
The August 23rd, was that a meeting or just an email, a correspondence?
She was in Albany for something else.
Because I was not aware of the
she
meeting.
wanted to stop by and...
I was not aware of that. I just got the, email information, but...
Yeah, I mean, it says, Ross, thank you for meeting with me on August 23rd to discuss upcoming projects at the Floyd Bennett Memorial Airport during my visit to upstate New York. I noted the following during our meeting. And I just, out of respect for the process, and of course what we hope is that as a committee and as a board, we give direction to department heads on what, the board is looking to have happen. And while the extension is still going forward at this time, it would be nice to know about some of these things. I know maybe sometimes they come up, but could we at least get a follow-up right away instead of having Doug have to get, USB drives of all these emails and sort through them? And could there just be updates on meetings with FAA on a regular basis at our committee meetings?
Well, I guess it starts with here. I didn't know about it, and I don't expect, Ross generally brings everything to committee. Even with the court project, I don't want to be the only one and then omit telling the committee. And going back to what you're saying about discussing it, I think in fairness, we bring it up here publicly so that there's no, there's no maneuvering or anyone thinks that I'm telling Ross. I mean, he does his job, he reports, and I think we've been open as honest as we can be. And they've had, Ralph Delgado, who's in charge of our district at the FAA, has just flown up here without a notice and then taken a look at things. And, I wasn't aware of that. And I don't think, the committee, if if everyone was notified, they'd have to make time, et cetera.
Just
The
an
same as the
update
court.
at a meeting, that's all.
Court tour and, Columbus
Yeah.
Day and all the things. You can't be involved in everything. That's why we run through a committee and a chairman, and that's my question to Doug. Are you satisfied with the thoroughness of where we're moving forward? Because certainly the years kind of stand the test of time of what we looked at in the data collection, and we have two agencies, a federal and the state. We have engineers, and the beat goes on and on. So I have never seen anything looked at so thoroughly, and not that anyone wants to listen to my opinion, but it's gut-wrenching to think that all this has to be done for 1,000 feet of runway. Thank God I wasn't a chairman for the Interstate 87, because it would have never made Montreal. That's the way I feel. There had to be a lot of environmental issues with that, etc. And I'm just looking to go 1,000 feet.
Yeah. That was good, Dan. But I got a good. It's not just 1,000 feet. It's a $10 million plus project. It's a lot of money to the county residents. So, as much as the Northway and so forth, which 99.9% of the population uses, when about 3% of the population use the airport, it's an entirely different situation. But that being said, your question to me was, am I satisfied with the transparency or something along the process?
The thoroughness of the environmental.
And I would, thoroughness of the environmental. The information flow to me has been better. I wouldn't say it's great. I'd say it's better, and for that I appreciate. But if Ross had sent out an email saying the FAA is going to pop up today at 1 o'clock, anybody to this committee, anybody who wants to sit in, feel free. That would have been a smart move, in my opinion. Could we have made it? Maybe yes, maybe no. But when we don't have the option, when we don't know, we find out 3 weeks later, well, we'd never got the option. So that bothers me. Do I want to be informed every time the FAA comes up? Yeah, you're right. I do. I want to know when the FAA is coming up to sit down with Ross or Jeff Tennyson or you, and I want the option of being able to sit in on that meeting. And so whether I do or not, that's my option. But you shouldn't take that option away from me, or Craig, or Claudia, or anybody else on this committee. I think it's our right as supervisors, elected people, to have the option to get more information in the time it's given, not 3 weeks later. And so, although I applaud, like I said, I am getting some emails now, and thank you, Ross. It's been a 3-year process of pulling teeth to getting information. I know former Paul Dusek said, no, Doug, it's too hard to do. Well, Paul, I hope you're enjoying Florida, because you did a poor job on that. And so going forward, yes, include me in on those emails. Anytime the FAA comes up, I want to make this publicly known. I want to at least know about it, and I think all the committee members should know about it too. And then if we can make it, great. If we can't, so be it. Thank you, Dan.
Can you do the airport advisory update? We're still on information for discussion. I didn't hear Ross
Exactly,
address
and
that.
that's a good point to see how long these things take to develop, and why there's a chairman, and why, like did get a call yesterday, there was a tractor on fire out at the airport, and Ross was getting dispatched because they had shut down a runway, et cetera, why they tended to that. But those are things that crop up. I don't think he could inform the whole committee. If you
That's
want to go
not
out.
something we want to be informed on, Dan.
You don't want to go out, it could contaminate the moral fen, it right up your alley.
And if that did, then obviously he should.
So he needs to be discretionary about
You got to use a little, I call it common sense,
Well,
Dan.
there you go.
Well, I know, common sense.
And the meeting, our meeting
Common sense
is
is
done
really
at
so common
10:30.
sometimes.
You can see the difficulties of the discussions and moving them along and addressing things.
Dan.
Doug takes the floor, even though it's a minority. He's in a minority that doesn't want the runway extension bill, but we listen and we get all the information, and much of it's very good. But it does take time to get through all that. And we've been doing it for...
Just give me the information. I'll decipher if I want to use it or
You've
not.
made your
As
point
simple as that.
very clear that
Make it happen.
you want the information.
Make it happen.
And just before we do move to the advisory, Travis, I didn't, and anyone in the audience, I didn't offer the privilege of the floor with the buildings and grounds, and I think the moral fen, if you have anything to discuss with that now, you're certainly welcome to come to the podium or whatnot. I apologize for missing that before we went to airport.
That's entirely fine. My understanding is going around. And just to comment on this thing, the only thing I would have been interested in is, I saw some emails and some pictures going back and forth. CNS engineers had asked Mr. Edinger to come back and look at the Marl Fen because it had been flooded for many months. There was beavers that were clogging up the ditches that had been there for many years. And so he was invited to come out sometime in the spring, and it was arranged in July, early July. I think if some people knew about him being out here in July, they probably would have taken advantage of the time to talk to Mr. Edinger and ask him some questions and maybe understand a little bit more about the Marl Fen. And if I had an opportunity, I would. I'm not saying I deserved one, but I think the members here would have. So I think that would have been good. And I did read that email. It came from CNS engineers, and it basically said, hey, this thing's been flooded for many months. Someone told me that the workers out there, the DPW workers out there, called it Lake Dewberry. And they were wondering whether or not there was still evidence that the Marl Fen was viable. I mean, you could tell that they were hoping that it wasn't. But he came in July, he issued his report, and I think he did say, he did say it was viable. But thank you for the time.
Sorry about missing it at the end of the meeting.
Can I just clarify a couple things?
Just a couple things, yeah.
So, Mr. Edinger was the one that reported that that section of Marl Fen was poor, so this wasn't something that we made up years ago. We were going up based on his assessment, and it was always part of the plan to have a reassessment done, and I imagine next year they'll want to come back again. As far as the meeting with the FAA, it wasn't a meeting, I didn't even go to it. It was a stop, hey, I'm going to be in the area, can I stop by and visit the airport, because this FAA official had never been to the airport. She was in Albany, said, hey, do you mind if I come up and take a look? And in that email, there was no surprises in that email. This is kind of what we've been tracking for years now, as far as when the next process of the projects will proceed. I don't think we would have been going to construction until 2019. The only difference is right now, instead of getting the design grant right now, we're going to get it probably end of winter, and we'll be into design next year. So, so that's all. I just want to clarify a couple things.
If a FONSI is granted. Claudius, can you...
one thought, Jeff, you say, well, we've known this for years. We haven't. We're on the committee. Why haven't we? That's the point. When you guys have information and you don't share it with Claudia, with Rachel, with Matt, with Doug, with Ron, I mean, that's the whole point of this that I've been trying for 3 years, Dan. That's why I'm so frustrated. I want the information when we get it. I don't want to know when Jeff says, well, we've known it for years. No one for years. I haven't. I've been on the committee.
I respectfully disagree that we've given you all the information that's pertinent.
No, that's not accurate, Dan. No.
Okay, if you disagree, I understand if you disagree, that's fine.
Either I get it or I don't, and I haven't got it.
Well, you knew that it was .08. You said this gentleman is making it bigger now.
I just got it 2 weeks ago. He said he's been getting
we're saying that that's not accurate, that we'll look into it again and see if it goes back to 08 or if it goes to a bigger number, but and the hydrology is becoming into play. I know you're frustrated, but I think you're frustrated more with the fact that the environmental isn't stopping the project yet.
No, I'm not. Not at all. I'm frustrated that I don't get the information when it comes out, and I get it 6 months or a year later.
To get to that
Dan,
point.
Don't put words in my mouth. I'm frustrated that I don't get the
I'm
information.
getting badgered here, and I feel that I've done a good job getting information to everybody.
With me, please, Dan.
Well,
come on.
Fair
Just
is
be
fair.
honest.
You get to say what you want. I get to say what's in my heart.
Well, I'm a victim too, then, because I don't get information as elected official.
Okay, we're both victims. All right.
Just let the process work correctly.
Well, you're correctly and my correctly are having
That's
a
a
difference
problem.
here.
That's a major problem. I agree.
And it's 10:01 now. We'll now move on to the airport advisory.
And I just want to, I know you said that the minority, we're in the minority of the board about the extension, but I do believe it's the majority of the public that's exposed to the extension.
We have a difference of opinion there.
Okay. So the airport advisory group, and I hate to pile on more bad news. But as you're aware, Supervisor Sokol attended the last meeting, and I think he can probably also address the concerns of the advisory group. I know there's many people here that were there, as well as Travis has been very helpful, and I know Steve and Ross and Jeff were both not able to make the last meeting. I think the frustration from the group comes from there isn't anyone present other than Brian, which has done a wonderful job at keeping us updated from the working group. And so, we're coming on a year from the time that we formed this group, and in part, a large part of it was to have an opportunity to provide technical advice to the RFP process. And I know there's a difference of opinion over whether we have a lot of time or a little time, but I don't think there's ever been a difference of opinion about why that was formed again. And one of the concerns has been that they've asked for a draft RFP for several months. And what we found out from Brian's report, and we still are unsure who's in that working group, who's chairing it, who's working on it, because that information wasn't available to us. But we haven't seen a draft RFP, but now we're told it will be an RFQ. And Brian gave us an update on that, but they did ask that we put in writing, and Supervisor Sokol represented that with me as well on behalf of our airport group, that if we could please have that within that 2-week time frame so that they could review it and make technical advice recommendations back to this group before this group sees it, which is what I'm assuming will be next month. And so I think I have that right in terms of that frustration. I don't know if Supervisor Sokol wants to add anything to that.
Well, government's government, and that's the worst part of us trying to do business up here in Oregon. When I got on the board in 2006, the train thing was going on in 1993. Still going. My frustration as a business owner is seeing how government does work, and here we are where we've got the FBO contract coming up at the end of the year, next year, and we need to do details taken care of. That's my only frustration, is that it has been going on for a while, and is it going to continue to go on? I don't know. I think Mary alluded to the fact, or no, it was Julie alluded to the fact that it's going to take 6 months to review the RFQ. So here we are 6 months already into the future, and we still haven't really had anything finished yet. So that was my only concern, is that I'm getting nervous for next year already.
Anything else?
No, I think that probably, we spent a lot of time talking about that, but also I know Brian's been giving you updates from our committee meeting to whoever is on the working group, asking that you take a look at concerns about maintenance, concerns about training schools, just a host of different issues that, frankly, we don't want to not meet, but they haven't been wildly productive from the perspective of making any progress with that, what will now be an RFQ once this committee takes a look at it, if that's approved that way. So, I hope that you're able to get those minutes, and I just haven't had any correspondence back, and I'm hoping that maybe Brian or Chairman Conover has an update on what's going on with that group.
What's an RFQ?
Request for, Brian can explain it. He's probably the request for qualifications.
What we proposed was a hybrid RFQ, RFP, so that instead of locking ourselves into setting forth in the RF, whatever letter, exactly what kind of a plan or a program we're seeking from someone who's going to propose, rather request for qualifications and set broad parameters and let someone propose that new or different idea that's outside the box, if there's one that will the goal we've set is to maximize the use of the facility, of the physical facility at the airport, and to maximize the revenue to the county and minimize the revenue the county spends on the airport. So within those broad parameters, we want to open those functions up, and if it means not setting forth exactly what we want, if someone has a different idea, that's what we're trying to accomplish. In the 6 months, if I could address that, my recollection, and I confirmed this with Julie after the memo went out, was that the 6 months that she was envisioning was a reasonable time frame from the time the RFQ, RFP went out to the time an award was made. So that wasn't, 6 months to review it once proposals came in. That was the total window that she was looking at. I don't believe she made that a hard and fast time frame. It's the reasonable and probably appropriate time frame for something like this.
Claudia?
Thanks. I'm concerned about the transparency of the process, just as Supervisor Sieber was talking about. I mean, who is the we that you're talking about created this RFQ, RFP, and is there a draft? Why haven't we not seen it yet? Why has the advisory group not seen it? I mean, I've only been to a couple of those meetings, but there's a lot of people from our community who are very invested in the airport who want to see that document. They've been asking for months. And I think that this decision is a pretty big decision for the airport. I've been telling my constituents, I don't know how I'm going to vote, like which way we're going to go. I think there's lots of options available to us, and I'd like to be able to make a very informed decision, and I don't want to have to rush, but I don't want to make mistakes again, like, you know, that we certainly don't want to have another
Trash pile.
go through, right. So let's get this out there. I mean, a year from now is not, or, you know, the end of next year is rapidly approaching for a process this big, related to some asset that's so important to the county.
As Ricky Ricardo say, can I explain? This FBO coming up, we changed chairmans. Chairman Conover was instrumental in wanting to move this forward and getting all the pieces together. So we assembled a group with Jeff and Ross, Brian, as far as legally, Ed Bartholomew, and Wayne, is it Lamont?
Lamont, yep.
Wayne Lamont came in because he dealt with the railroad so much. And it's an excellent group. So we have met several times, had input from all those people, and the RFP process has first been educational, what we have and where we want to go, and then how do we get there. And legally and purchasing-wise, Julie, excuse me for leaving her out from purchasing, was involved. Explained some of the government issues that come into play when we're moving forward, and in a sense of fairness, how we have to keep it open and above board for everyone to bid on it. So in our last discussions of where we were headed, we had purchasing and legal chime in together and say it looks like the county would have a better opportunity with negotiating tactics, and step on my tongue if we put that out, because then we could sit down with those that we get of interest, and we could do a better job negotiating after we see the interest, where an RFP might limit how you would go about that. You might not get the best bang for the buck. That was all new to me. The RFQ was new to me. Julie was on board with it. These are people that deal with it every day, and Brian was on board with it. We set up with Ed Bartholomew and Wayne to finally have something to come back to the committee so that everyone gets involved. We can tell you, this is what we looked at, these are the things we see, kind of condense it and say, what are you feeling about how we're moving forward? And then this RFQ thing would have to be explained. And we are going to be actually going to meet this Friday, is what we wanted to do. And then I got the phone call from Brian that he was going to be moving on from the county, so I put a phone call in to Ed Bartholomew and talked to Jeff and Ross as far as, because we need this legal involvement, especially with the change of RFQ and the understanding of what we're going to get out of it. So Ed Bartholomew called yesterday and had his time blocked off for Friday, and I told him that I was going to meet with Brian and talk to him. We had a meeting today, and see how we move forward, because we're going to need legal counsel to certainly be the conduit through this all. And when Brian leaves, how are we going to handle that? Can Mary be brought up to snuff, and is the committee all comfortable? So that's what happened, but the objectivity of the whole thing was to get it back to committee for discussion, so that we had at least the focal points of what you people thought and how we move forward, so that none of us were making decisions and bringing it back and saying yes or no on what we wanted to do. It wasn't going to be like that at all. And when we got to that point, then certainly inputs that you would have from your people that you're dealing with at the advisory group could weigh in, etc.
So with that being said, and I know time is of the essence, both in this committee and overall, I will say, though, that on the master schedule that comes out for committee meetings, this was scheduled for 9 to 1 today. So I don't know why we are cutting short our committee meetings, because
This was 9 to 1?
on the annual meeting schedule that we all have, it just says committee meetings, and sometimes Amanda's done a great job with it. So 9 to 1 was committee meetings today, and evaluations were going on this afternoon. So we just go by that, at least I go by for our meetings, when committee meetings are and how long we have. So I'm not, you know,
And this meeting was going to be 9 to 1?
No, committee meetings
Or just
today
committee?
until 1. So
Well, I don't know if it, the meeting we wanted to have it specifically for that, and because it probably would be an executive session.
Right.
Because of sensitivity of keeping things above board, et cetera.
But my specific question, so I think this is time well spent. I'm fully prepared to be, I appreciate not rushing these discussions because they are critical to what we're all doing. But I guess my concern is that the committee asked for a joint meeting with your working group. When would that be possible? And will we see something for the next advisory group? I mean, is it October, is it November, that we could have a joint meeting? Perhaps you
Could we have the chairman chime in?
I think I would like to. Just, staff, the affected departments have been, you know, my instructions to them is move forward with all speed and diligence, if that's what we're doing. I need to correct something, though. It's not, somebody said something about first going to the advisory committee. That draft, that's a working draft, by the way. It's not a draft like, okay, now we go to final, because they have the input. That will come here to facilities, it can go to all the supervisors. At some point, it becomes a public document. The advisory group has private people on it, including an FBO. This group's going to have to discuss, because there's some things that you may find within the RFP and the RFQ that are of a strategy point of view and negotiating kind of thing. Some things you may want to discuss publicly, some things you may not want to discuss publicly. But at some point, I would assume shortly thereafter that it would be, the draft would be available. I've discussed it with Brian. It would be available to everyone, including all FBOs that might be interested in bidding on this. So I think that the staff is aware of all of this. I think they have a very good lead on this. But let me say this because I was the one after becoming chairman said I want to start this process as soon as possible. Right after the Siemens thing, I mean, the closure around this, and thank you for the kudos. Deserved or not. And thank you for it. I'm not inclined to want to be panicked. And I would encourage you to not rush out of it. I think there was a point in time when we as a board felt a little pressed because the contract became due, and oh my God, what are we going to do? And we're going to enter into some 5-year extension on the agreement. Some people perhaps today weren't happy about that for one reason or another. I'm not going to be panicked like that. As far as I'm concerned, you know, we will move forward correctly. If we have to make, and I doubt this will happen, but if we have to make a provision for covering certain services for certain periods of time, we will do that. And hopefully, we will end up in a good place. Now, my charge to the committee, and one of the things that's kind of more difficult to handle here is, you know, was to the extent that the private sector can allow us to achieve greater efficiencies and economies, that the process should try to glean that out of the private sector, because those are the things that perhaps we're doing that the private sector can do at less cost. And if that can happen, we should want to know that, right? We can evaluate it later, whether we think that is something we want to do. So the affected departments, Public Works, Airport, Legal, Planning, and we brought Ed Bartholomew in, and of course purchasing. They're the involved departments. Now, at some point, this committee is going to get a draft, I assume, in the not too distant future. And, you know, part of the discussion will not only be the RFP itself, the RFQ itself, but how do you want to proceed with it at that point? Because it's still kind of a working document. So I'm very comfortable. The staff has been instructed to move forward with all speed. I know months have gone by, and I know that that's frustrating. I'd like to have it today as well. I'd like to have it in front of you. about, and that's why we tried to, with the committee, first take a look at income, the profit centers at the airport. Where's the income coming from? Because I felt, and the chairman felt, that a lot of supervisors needed to understand that how much money is the airport generating, right? And then, although there wasn't a lot of discussion, we also went over some of the expenditures as well. There was not a lot of discussion regarding expenditures at the airport, but that's not to say that, and that's another thing, oh, by the way, it's not just the service. Contracted elements in the airport budget are as large as the personal service line, right? So the RFP and RFQ, if you're going to try to glean something out of the private sector, you have to also handle contractual items, right? You're going to turn on the electricity, who's paying for the electricity? You're heating the building, who's heating the building? Now, I think that, you know, we're going to try, I think, I have confidence the staff will produce this as quickly as they can, but to understand it's going to come to this committee first. I assume at that moment in time, because it's a contractual matter, at least initially, we'll have to go into some kind of executive session to discuss the contractual matters and how we're going to step forward with this process so that it's fair and level for everyone. So no one's prejudging anything. They're just trying to pull this together in the right way, and I have confidence that that's going to happen. Remember, this contract won't take place until January of 19. But even so, I don't see any, although I don't think it'll ever get to this, I don't see any reason why those things that we presently contract for couldn't be handled on a short-term basis if we had to do that. If we had to do that. I'm not saying we should, I'm not saying that's desirable, but should that happen, we can do that as well. So I'm very comfortable with where we are right now. It'll come to this committee. This committee can decide what it wants to do, what it likes, what it doesn't like, how it wants to proceed, send it off to advisory, on whatever terms and conditions are appropriate. I don't know. So that's
Okay, Claudia?
Thank you. I won't pass on my chance. I really appreciate knowing where we are, and I think that it would be great. We're going to have to schedule a meeting where we really have a lot of time to go over this, because what Chairman Conover just said about educating us on what our income and expenses are, I do not feel up to date right now, and I'd like to know what you guys have already discussed about why we would go a certain direction and not go a different, you know. I feel like everyone on this committee needs to be educated as to what those subcommittees are doing.
Yeah, you'll definitely get all the information we have. What's interesting is Wayne Lamont is new to this, so he's bringing himself up to speed as he reads the contract and where we're going. So he's good in so much that he hasn't had a history and he has to get himself up to speed, which will be good hearing his input from his involvement up to date. And that's what we need, is collectively a meeting of this committee to discuss all the parameters of what's going on and then hear your input.
And what you guys have already weeded out and why. So
No,
we don't have to go back
nothing.
through
We've brought more into the equation, to where there might be some people come in and talk to us about how they did it, what they did, and why they did it, and what the ramifications have been. So the scope is going to be bigger, so that the focus is not so centralized, and we have hopefully more opportunities, and we do better budget-wise. That's the ultimate goal, is that we cut the bottom line. So we've had a lot of good input with all that. You're going to have all that. You guys ultimately make the decisions, and that's been expressed to all the players involved. Have I done that properly?
Absolutely.
And my number one goal was getting it back to committee for your discussion and your input. Okay, there's been no decisions, but there's been a culmination of what you need to have in front of you to make your decisions, okay?
Yeah.
So I want you to be clear on that. No one's going to be coaxing you one way or another. You're going to look at it and have your opinions
No, I
and let us...
think all options are open to us.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Matt?
so
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Keep it short and sweet. While I appreciate everything you just said, especially the part about panic. You don't want to be panicked. I think that sets a tone for how we're going to approach this, and I think that's the proper way to do it. However, I do have a little bit of a panic in that in my brief time on the board, I have learned a little bit of how things work, and sometimes we get things presented to us and in a way that it is to the point where it's a yes or no. And if it turns into a no, then essentially we go back to the drawing board, and it prolongs the process that much longer. And that's something that I don't want to see happen. So my concern here is we are going to get something very comprehensive presented to us, and it's going to be, do you guys like it, do you not like it? And then if we don't like it, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. And how far back does that set us? So with something so comprehensive, I think, and as you alluded to, it is growing in scope, I think it would be beneficial to at least present to us where we are with this so far at the current point before it gets to a yes or no decision. That's where I stand on it.
Yes, and I hope I communicated to you that that is my intention, and I would agree with you that many times I've fallen into the trap that you have, where it's come before you, it's up and down, and you wish you had more information or more involvement. That will not happen with this process. This committee will be ultimately responsible for the vote. Everyone might not agree, and there will be, once again, a minority. I would hope you would respect that, and we could move forward and not reinvent the wheel. But there will be a vote, you will have your input, and we will do the best we can for the county. Will everyone agree? I haven't seen that happen since I've been on the board. So, but that will be brought eventually to the full board and voted on, and you will have the same information we all have. And I hope you trust that that's what we're bringing to you. Rachel?
Well, just as it relates to the advisory airport committee, then, the way I'm looking at this then is, it obviously isn't today that we have information on the RFP, RFQ. So that means we're into October. Hopefully in October we'll have a few hours to collectively talk, and if it does go into executive session, it does concern me that we won't have some of that expertise that we've put together in the advisory board. But for whatever reason, I hope that this committee will then give the advisory board an opportunity to look at what they can and give advice back, which was the intent of which it was set up, determined by this committee that it would be helpful, and then perhaps in December they'll be able to come back and give that information. And Dan, with any luck before January, hopefully we're able to make a decision while you're still ahead of this committee. But you know, we just talked about a 4-year project for a building to house some emergency equipment. I'm very skeptical, and it's not a panic, it's just a factual statement from the advisory group that they are concerned, they would like more information. I think this group would like it. It sounds like it's on its way, but with all due respect, we've been hearing that, you know, for the last 6 months. So all I'm looking for is that you will, as a committee, consider the advice and seeking the advice of the airport advisory group. We did make a decision that at that year mark, if we can't be productive in that role, then we won't have that group anymore. And many members have already commented on their frustration with that. So I am just conveying that information. Certainly there's members here that can speak up and let you know how they feel, but I appreciate that consideration, and hopefully collectively we'll have a great private-public partnership.
Okay, I'm looking possibly if I could talk to Brian, and then maybe next Friday to have this meeting that I'm talking about, where we collectively bring everyone up to snuff about where we're at with it and where we're going, and get your input. But tentatively, it's mostly, I held off till I talked to Brian because I know he's inundated with getting stuff done, but the chairman did say that before he left he wanted him vitally involved, and then Mary possibly coming in and etc. And if that doesn't work for him, that would be the only reason why the scheduling wouldn't take place. Then if that's okay with the committee?
You're looking at the 29th, Dan?
Yeah, if that would be okay, is that all right with everyone?
I mean, just it's a week and a half away. Is there a way we can get a time so we can try to block the time out on our calendars?
Is 10 o'clock all right, next Friday? Is that conflicting with anyone? Is that anything going on that?
Is that the 29th?
Yeah, but let me just double check.
Chairman?
Chairman, at the appropriate point in the meeting, I would like an executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular individual.
Okay, we're about done here, so that'll be shortly. Just.
I'm not sure I can introduce that. I'm not on the committee.
Chairman, can I raise one issue before we do that?
Go ahead.
In line with the advisory committee and the concerns and the advice they have, there is an issue that I wanted to bring up today because it's important that it was raised by the advisory committee at the last meeting. One of the functions that is going to go out for a proposal and qualifications is aircraft maintenance shop. Now, we have a fantastic facility over there There is some sentiment that it's not being used to its full potential. That's not a sentiment, I can't say that's the sentiment of the entire advisory group, but it was raised. And the question is how to deal with that and how to solve that problem. There are, as I see it, there are three possible solutions that came up that I can think of. One that was suggested is to make that an essential part of whoever wants to propose to be the fixed base operator, one of the core services that's required by anyone who essentially wants to sell fuel, because that's the golden fleece over there. The other option is to make it a standalone option that someone could propose to operate as a single operation and be a limited service fixed base operator, or to combine it with any of the others. That would be up to whoever's proposing to do that. And the third hybrid option, I think, would be to allow it either way in the RFQ, RFP. You tell us whether you want to include it or whether you don't want to include it. That essentially makes it one of the options, but it leaves it on the table for either way. I can't say there was a consensus from the advisory committee. There were opinions both ways. And I think that's the kind of decision that it's up to this committee to give to the people who are drafting the RFP.
Hey, Ron?
Isn't that the way it is in Saratoga? Somebody runs the maintenance, and then there is an FDO that runs the airport?
I believe it's the same entity in Saratoga, but that's really Ross's.
Same
Okay.
entity.
Well, they're both the same? Yes. Okay.
Okay, Ron, we want to move into executive session to discussion of a,
Yeah, I mean,
of the performance of a,
I went to an executive session, I'm going to read Brian here, but I may need a ruling in executive session, but since it deals with the employment history of a particular individual.
employment history of one of our workers.
That's correct.
Okay, could I have that motion?
Before I make that motion, could I suggest to you, Chairman, that you take privilege of the floor from the public before we go into executive session?
Well,
And then
yes, I'm sorry. Privilege of the
That's you.
floor?
You're the chairman.
I thought
I know.
you know what, I thought because I involved in the discussion. Go ahead, Steve.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a quick question.
Steve, would you just stand up because the hearing aids,
No, it's all right.
they're state of the art, but...
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just here on behalf of actually the Aviator Restaurant. There's an issue with the parking during the Balloon Festival for the restaurant, and they've asked me to seek your assistance on. The dilemma is basically, it was understood that we have the restaurant open during the Balloon Fest this year, which would be fantastic. But we do have reservations that have been made for this. And I've been recently informed this morning by Ross that unfortunately, unless they have a balloon pass for preferred parking or handicap parking, they're going to have to park in the public parking out on the runway. And I wanted to know if there's a way that we can come up with a compromise or a solution on that, being that we don't want to turn our customers away, and these have been reserved in months in advance. I was hoping that we can come up with a compromise this morning, and they've asked me to ask you for some guidance on that assistance, to see if we can work together, maybe instead of having that parking space all for the handicap in front of the restaurant, delegated some for the airport and some for the restaurant.
They still have to get in, though.
Yeah, they have. Can we just have them send their customer a little pass, a thing that says I'm going to the restaurant
The
parking?
sheriff's department won't let them turn in without a pass.
Right, so we'll have them have a pass of some nature.
Yeah, we've sold, 500 parking permits, and I don't know how many of them are handicapped. That area is all reserved for paid handicapped parking. That's what we've done.
That's very, very sensitive area that gets filled with handicap. Rachel?
I'm concerned that this is coming up right before Balloon Fest weekend, and from all of those that have volunteered in the past, we know how crazy all the parking is. And we make revenue off of every meal that's sold at the Aviator restaurant. This is obviously a prime time for people who want to go and have dinner. And I'm a little surprised that it's coming up right now. Isn't there a way that we could provide a certain number of passes over to the Aviator restaurant so that we can continue to generate that revenue? We all want to talk about ways to find revenue in this county, but I would like to bring up the fact that our overtime at DPW and our overtime at the sheriff's office, which is not covered by occupancy tax, which comes from the county taxpayer dollar, is almost $30,000. It actually exceeds $30,000. And those are the numbers that have been provided from Jeff and from Under Sheriff Lamry. So let's be smart here on how we're going to compare the revenues, but I think being good partners
Rachel, there's going to be some, 10,000 people there, so I don't think it's an issue of anyone going in for business to the Aviator. It's the parking issue,
Right.
which is difficult for us. Chairman?
I just want to say that this is not this was a matter that I believe was part of the agreement that was negotiated. Maybe I just want to set there was provision. This was a discussion point as part of the original agreement, lease agreement. Maybe just quickly, Brian, just so we set that as a historical fact.
The lease agreement for the lease agreement contemplated that the county could, but was not required to shut down the airport, and I believe that the original plan of the restaurant was they were shutting down during the festival, but that's changed. I believe they're within their rights to do
It was a historical plan. It was a matter that was deliberated, it was discussed, and it was part and parcel of the original lease. I just wanted, what the committee and what we decided to do from this point on, I just wanted to make sure of that.
I think ultimately they have reservations. You can come off of Ridge Road just like everyone else, park on the runway, and they can proceed to the Aviator. That would be my suggestion.
And what if they have disabilities or handicap?
If they have handicap, we've accommodated handicap people coming with their handicap sticker in their window, and we send them to that area. They're supposed to have a parking...
Have a list then at the front entrance and say, hey, if you have a reservation, you can come in. I have a hard time with the parking situation only because we've been told that we can't have exclusive rights to the parking area. So why then would the airport then have exclusive rights to that parking area?
Because we own it.
Business of operation there.
I think in the original lease you didn't want exclusive rights. That's what you're referring to. We own it and we have the right to it. And I think you're being totally off kilter here the day before the Balloon Fest with the parking and the safety issues we have, etc. Operating the biggest event of the year and worrying about the fact that you're not going to have enough patrons, or you're trying to accommodate your patrons.
Well, we were under the impression before today that they would be allowed to come in, that they gave their name, they have reservations at the restaurant in advance, and there was no mention of that until it was brought up to our attention.
Have you ever
today.
been out to the Balloon Festival and participated with coming into the private parking and your restaurant while it's going on?
I'm sorry?
Have you been out to the Balloon Fest and entered with the Sheriff's Patrol out there, et cetera, and with your
I've
parking,
seen it when I had to come in.
your parking pass, et cetera? Do you know the dilemma that it creates?
There's no dilemma if you have a pass. My point is that I just didn't know if there's a way we can compromise with the restaurant people.
I don't think today. Claudia?
Sorry, I stepped out. Did he say how many reservations he's talking about?
It could be upwards of 40 reservations spanned over a couple days. I mean,
Yeah, we
And
did
I
discuss
simply would
this
say
in
go
the-
Ridge Road, come in and park on the runways and come to the restaurant.
Maybe you could do a
If they're
shuttle.
handicapped, I think they'll actually accommodate them on possibly the tarmac.
as
Closer
long as they
to
have a
the-
handicap badge, they can come in as normal.
On the opposite side, on your back end of your restaurant, but if they come in on the runway and they state that we have handicap areas, that they could get to the restaurant a lot easier, I
The
think.
festival uses golf cart shuttles for handicap patrons as well, to get them closer to the festival grounds as well. So.
Yeah, just to be 100% clear, so there is paid parking at the terminal entrance, that's handicap and non-handicap, but that is by paid pass only to come in the terminal entrance. The free parking on the airfield has a handicap designated area too, and we get them as close as we can to the front apron, and there's golf carts that run handicapped individuals from that parking area right over to the main area. So there is free handicap parking. There's also paid handicap parking. The area around the restaurant is paid handicap parking, and it's been a challenge, as we know, every year. It's always been a challenge, and it became more of a challenge once the
So
restaurant
they
was built.
can shuttle a handicapped person can be shuttled to the
Yes.
restaurant?
Yes, to and from.
And then if they're not handicapped, general parking, and then just notify the shuttle person that they're going
Or
to...
they can buy a parking pass. You don't have to get
No,
into it.
if they're non-handicapped and they go into free parking, they'll just walk over to the restaurant and walk back.
Okay. We need to get an executive session. We're overstating our time, and could I have a motion to go in for the reasons that were stated earlier about discussion of the work performance of a particular individual that works for the county, and seconded by Doug. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, you need a majority of the number of the members of the committee to vote for executive session.
Okay, can I show of hands
I'll vote,
in
yeah.
favor? Rachel, are you in favor of executive session? Rachel?
Well, I don't know what it's about, but sure.
Unanimous?
Um,
Opposed? Anyone opposed?
emergency. I don't know why the time isn't scheduled. I look at the yearly calendar every month and just put committee meetings in 9
We have budget review, I forgot.
And then whatever committee meetings are there.
I was doing that too, Rachel. But can't.
Have my DPW meeting.
You guys have? We're out of executive session. No action will be taken in public session. We do have budget review. And if we could execute that now. Matt, where are you going?
Oh, man, just gotta go to the bathroom.
Sorry. All those in favor?
Matt? Come on. So, if, here, can you help me out, Ross?
Yeah, of course.
I made hard copies for the committee members, and then I have a few extra copies that we'll review it on the screen here. Couple more. So I can go through this line by line, or we can skip around if there's particular items the committee wants to review. The fleet budget largely is money in, money out. That's funded by...
Does anyone have any objections just to any of their significant changes, or you can certainly ask any question that you want. Rachel?
Why is insurance general liability doubling from what you asked for in 2016? I see 2017 it was a higher cost. Did something change?
That's given to them by Amy Kloop, so that's given to them.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions on fleet? The next code is A1620. That's the bulk of Frank's budget, and it's for this building in particular.
Electricity is going up by a gazillion, sorry.
Okay. No, you're doing good. Can you give a code number?
415
On 1620?
on,
Yeah.
Court facility.
yes, 1620.
The court.
So that's the court building.
That's a new
We have
court.
new service,
I'm sorry?
additional service lines coming in for the
For the
court.
court. Is that the 1620? What one am I looking at?
Yeah, 162415.
I've been asked a little bit how long.
From 178 to 220.
Why didn't we build a solar roof on the court expansion? Too bad there, guys.
Rachel?
The repair and maintenance, we've spent 2,100 to date. You're requesting 6,500. In 2016, we spent 1,400. Is that just an unknown in terms of what's going to break and what needs to be fixed?
Frank, you want to talk to some of that?
Which code are you on?
422 under 16.
422 on 1620.
Maintenance equipment.
Sort of like us, our bodies get older.
We spent 20, actual 2017 to
Heat
2193.
pump repairs, mower repairs,
Okay.
boiler services. So that's for the building type equipment where we have additional repair work.
Why are your
422.
You're all right.
why are your data processing fees so low, but I'm seeing in other budgets they're really higher, like they're 1,000, 1,500, 2,500. How come yours are so different? Sometimes we're combined. But you're telling.
They're really, go ahead, Frank.
We only have 3 computers that have internet. We don't have a lot of use as far as IT goes, with our phone lines or stuff.
And And your travel and education is so low too. I mean, we're really trying to get people out and get, whether it be leadership or stress management or, you know, stress training, things like that. You don't go to a lot of training?
We don't, we do a lot of in-service training here in DPW. I have been looking for a boiler course for my guys. The boilers are totally different now than they used to be. But it's such new technology that no one is teaching it yet. The people that are actually building these things don't even know how to work on them. So as soon as I find a good one, I'll be requesting to send a couple guys to it. I'll put $200 in because I have no idea what it would cost. But a lot of the supply houses like FW Webb, Sawyer's, they supply these trainings for free.
Okay.
So we take advantage of those when we can.
Go ahead, Kevin.
If Miss Sieber wants to continue to raise the budgets, she should look for a course for the budget officer in stress management, because I'm sure he's going to need one for travel and education.
Well, no, I just want to point out that we've met with our department heads and talked about succession planning. Are you kidding? Well, full star, Darlene, that's a joke. We're getting along. No, I've learned a lot throughout these last 4 years of looking at budgets, and it's always funny how one department it's allowable and another it's not. It's very interesting, like the food line. I thought we weren't allowed to use a food line in trainings that we've done for department staff. Kevin and I have split the cup of coffee for employment for our department heads because we haven't been allowed to use it.
That food line is overtime plowing. Per contract called in. The employee's allowed to go to breakfast if it's before a certain amount of time and lunch. Or if you were kept overtime.
There's those
So you get like a DSA rate. Okay.
It's not a DSA rate, but it's
like a
contractually, it's been in the contract forever.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's informative.
Okay, anything, we set with 1620, how about 1621?
Mr. Chairman, just one explanation there
Greg?
on 2411. There, the maintenance in lieu of rent for the health and HSB. How does that work? Maintenance in lieu of rent?
Those are reimbursements for departments that are partially funded from outside sources. So over there, it's primarily DSS. So we're able to back charge DSS for their office space.
Okay. There's actually a 2-year lag on that, where we bill them based on last year's budget in March, I think we do. So there is some lag. So if for some reason we did a large amount of work, it might not show up for a year on the maintenance in lieu of rent. On the HSB building, we're only allowed to, well, on any building, we're only allowed to charge up to a certain percentage. Really not charging them what it's costing us to run that building, but it's all regulated by the state.
Ron? Anything? Okay, we want to move to 1621 quickly.
Yeah, that's the old building 11.
And what building is that? Building 11.
That's we used to call it the WIC building. It's where the Historical Society is now. Yes. Over on Gurney Lane, second building on the right. We had that budget. We didn't have a budget in that building for a while, but we did put some money in there for electrical costs and some upgrades that we did on the building.
The building was taken off the cogen, so that added in an electric line.
Any other questions on that?
Okay, 1624, that's the HSB.
Frank, I see that you have the boiler maintenance only at 2,000. Oh, that's over in the other building, never mind.
The HSB building are the newer type boilers also. And there's a kit you have to buy every year to service the filter kit. So that's the $2,000. We do the maintenance ourselves, but
And you do the maintenance here, so that's why it doesn't show up as separate.
Siemens does the maintenance on the system that's hooked to the geothermal. That's part of that contract.
And those big old boilers, they're part of that system?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Correct?
Yeah, the 100s over 800s there, it's 70%, the benefits are 70%. Is that kind of high for that amount of personal services?
They don't generate those are given to them from the other departments. I guess we'd have to ask the treasurer's department, right? Isn't that where they
Lock
come,
me out.
Betsy?
I can't even get into it. I can't even.
Is that right?
This comes from the treasurer's office.
Yeah, I was, usually it's not quite that high, so it's like something, more benefits are being charged to some of those personal services. Is that?
My understanding is those are calculated by the actual employees, so those are exact numbers based on those particular employees and their benefit elections.
Could have somebody change the health insurance. Somebody could go from a single to a two-person or a two-person to family. But those are all calculated by the treasurer's office and given to them. They don't calculate those. We can ask the treasurer to take a look at them.
It's out of line, so maybe just make sure that something's not unusual there. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? 1624. Okay. What, we got 5610 next?
Right, airport's next.
Mr. Beatty out in the hall, does someone want to get him?
I think he left.
Just want to keep him informed. He likes to be notified when there's information flowing. Trying to do my job.
Well, I have...
Rachel?
Under the data and processing and internet fees, do we have Wi-Fi that's public yet over at the airport?
No.
That's something we've looked into?
The FBO provides public Wi-Fi for their customers. They have a password they give out.
But not for other
Just-
members
just for
of the
their
public?
General public, but to the flying public, yeah.
So your data processing and internet fees is higher because, why?
I don't know why it's higher than other departments.
Well, how many, like you said you had $252 $8 because he had 2 computers.
Yeah, we have 3 computers, 3 phone lines, fax machine, and
Camera system. Camera,
internet,
security system.
internet
Okay.
service with Time Warner.
That's okay, I can ask Mike Colvin.
Private, not through the county.
My other question is the airport under the revenue piece of it. I don't understand why, earlier in the year, we were notified about a check from the airport restaurant and how much more that was than previously. But under actual amount, under 5610, the airport, under 1774, under department income, it says 0 is the actual amount, and this report was done on 9/14, and then it has an amount of $25,000 in for next year. Do we know what we've had in revenues from the restaurant yet?
No, they submit their payment once a year after the end of the year.
It's not done quarterly?
No, it's once a year. So we won't know until it's over.
Yeah. Maybe that's something, when we look at the contract under the airport, when you're changing it and you're looking at the FBL renewal, I mean, is that something that...
It's a separate lease
Yeah,
agreement.
that's
okay.
on his capital projects, you know, like the
That
hangars.
one?
Not related to the FBO.
Now, Ross, why though, under travel, education, and conference, you go to a lot of things, but you've decreased that to 3,600. Is that, I feel like we're always approving different trainings for you to go to.
There was a one-time training last year that sent 2 employees to Airfield electrical lighting course. So that's not a recurring expense, so that's why it dropped back down.
And why, you have foods under your thing too, is it for the same reason, on overtime?
The food,
Yeah.
that is partially for snow removal meals for DPW, highway, and airport crews for snow removal meals, as well as Balloon Festival meals that gets reimbursed through the donations and parking fees.
I just again want to bring up the fact that we have such a huge overtime cost between the sheriff and the DPW, and, you know, when you look at it, it says under here to bring in revenue to offset, where did I see that, about the Balloon Festival? It doesn't come close to covering those costs.
Between the donations and the parking fees, we are coming close to covering the actual expense for Balloon Festival itself, the overtime expense. So it's close to a break even just based on overtime.
Just for you, not the sheriff.
For the employees, but does not include the sheriff's department. That's true.
I would like to see that addressed in some capacity. I know I emailed Dennis Dickinson, and Kevin and I have been talking about it, but, you know, we've done it in the past for car show with, I know that's a different committee.
No, they won't.
They denied it on car show too?
Yeah, I brought it up 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I said that these events should pay for the overtime out of oxy-tax, and I was shot down by committee. And I was, I think, chairman of the board, and I didn't fight it. I just took my boys and went home.
I just think there's a lot of hidden costs to things that we aren't looking at as a whole. Certainly it's a great event for the community, but it comes at a cost.
That, side note, while you keep looking, the 30,000 in overtime, we were up to 20, what did we recoup? 20 some odd thousand?
I think last year...
Yeah, we had spent, about 18,000 in overtime and
right.
meals, and our parking fees and donations were about, it was almost break even.
We actually went over and covered it for the first time.
Yeah,
For DPW, but not for the 13,000 that, I got the figure yesterday from the sheriff's office.
Oh, yeah.
So that was 13,000 last year.
Ever.
So we're still kind of under there, but I think it should be
Yeah.
considered.
They can do an inspection.
Blah, I can't get it.
Are you coming out this year?
I actually took a picture of our 2 years ago together. I was going to send it to you today. I screenshotted it. And yes, I am. But there's other concerns I have which I do not want to talk about right now, given our time.
A picture I think I have above my office desk.
You do? Do you have it framed, Jan? I'm going to send it to you right now.
It's framed in gold.
Gonna miss you, Dan.
He uses it for a dartboard.
No. Kevin, you were on a roll today with me. That's so bad.
Claudia?
I'm just curious, back on fleet, I want to ask Frank how it's going with the hybrid car.
I think if ever we were going to have an education program, it would probably need to teach people how to drive a hybrid car.
Ow, my.
But it's going very well. It's a nice
Okay.
car. It's a really nice car, and people like it once they...
You have
The
to
biggest
go
thing is you
slow.
have to push the off button when you get out of it.
Well, you forget because you can't hear the engine. My brother got one
Otherwise,
of
it'll
those.
sit out here in the parking lot, and then when the batteries run low, it'll start and charge
Right.
the battery. So.
Yeah. But they've been working out good?
Very, yeah, people really like it, and
Yeah.
I've been sending it on, like Syracuse trips and longer trips.
Really? My brother goes to Albany every day. He got one and he loves it. So yeah, pretty neat.
Don't they beep when they sense the car keys leaving away from the vehicle?
Well,
That one
this
doesn't?
This one does.
I'm glad to hear it's going well.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Do you think we'll purchase another one in this year's round?
I think, I'm not sure about this year, what's up for a replacement, but
Okay.
I think it's definitely worth putting some in.
Will you talk to Julie about that?
Is everybody comfortable
Or
with
should
the
I?
airport?
I'll go in usually.
Any other questions?
Oh, okay, thank you.
Hybrid dump truck. Okay.
I don't think it's a Toyota. What did we get?
Ah. Did she leave?
Facilities coming.
But they got the extension. They're good with the extension. From what I understand.
Yeah, they received notification that they granted an extension for the grant for the county extension of the sewer line.
Countryside sewer home
Countryside.
extension, yeah.
And one of the issues is in light of all these hurricanes, it's probably more important to order these materials now under the current bid, award the bids, because of availability of these components could be an issue. The real issue is going to be how we're going to store them, protect them for next year.
Jeff's got lots of space.
Do we have, do we have room in the storage on the fairgrounds there, you know, that,
Yeah, you got the two,
like,
you
the
got-
glam?
as long as they don't have to be inside, the pipe doesn't have to be inside, you can put it right under the pole barns up there. It should be an issue.
That help out, Jeff? As far as-
Yeah, I don't know how much space it's gonna take.
They're 40-foot long pipe, 2 miles, close to 2 miles. A lot of pipe, a lot of components.
There's plenty of
And
room.
that's, yeah, and then there's chambers, the chambers shouldn't be a problem, those should go to the project site, but then there's pumps and valves and...
Nothing that climate control storage would accommodate, it's so has that.
Pat was checking in on that, Dan. She was checking with the suppliers to make sure that the pipe could be left outside. That's the biggest portion of it, is the pipe. And you're not gonna get it. It was a 12-week delivery when we tried to get it this year. If you don't get it now with all the damage, the storm damage, you're not gonna get it next year if you rebid it. So we should let the bids right away and order the materials and figure out...
Is that good with the committee?
Mhm.
That's what we should, yeah.
Yes.
Those are- Okay. Are we set with our review?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, man, second by Rachel?
I'm seconding it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. 45 minutes over. That's why they're getting rid of me.